Okay. It's so good to have you ladies here today. I hope you are having a wonderful Memorial Day. And thanks for choosing to take a little bit of your time to spend it with me here today. We are going to start off with one of my classic things that I do at every one of my webinars. If you are new here, welcome. If you are a familiar face, welcome back. Love to hear where you are tuning in from. Go ahead and put that in the chat. I'm here in Draper, Utah. So if you're familiar with Utah at all, there's kind of like Salt Lake and Provo are the two places most people know, and we're like dead set in the middle, Draper, right at the point of the mountains. So fun to have you ladies here. Awesome. Heidi's tuning in from Salt Lake. Welcome. Sonia, good to have you here as well. I know there's a few gals who wanted to be here, weren't able to, so we're going to catch them on the replay. Sometimes I have lots of people who show up on these, and sometimes it's more an intimate, smaller one. So we show up for the one, we show up for the many. So glad you're here. Let's go ahead and grab your phone, and I want you to head on over to your alarms. We're going to do a little activity here before we dive on in. If you've been to one of my events before, you know what's coming, but I want you to set an alarm for 9:09 a.m. or p.m., doesn't really matter. And I want you to put on that alarm, I am not alone. Okay? I am not alone. And the reason I want you to put this is because every day when that alarm goes off, I want you to pause in the middle of whatever it is you are doing. And I want you to remember a few essential things. First and foremost, we are never alone in that we have our spiritual team with us, our heavenly parents in Jesus Christ, our angels, our ancestors, so much support that is constantly available to us. But number two, I want you to imagine all of the other women who have ever been on one of these workshops with me or who has watched the replay of it. Like I said, I've had 300 people before, I've had just one or two. So there are countless women who are continually being added to this. And when that alarm goes off, we all have an opportunity to see each other in our mind's eye. And I want you to imagine all those other women. I want you to see them in their kitchens, in their offices, in their cars, like whatever they are doing. And I want you to just imagine light coming out of you and pouring to them and letting them know, hey, I see you, I got you, I'm with you, I care about you, you can do this. Right? So we're getting to have that opportunity to kind of pray for each other, connect with each other. And then the third thing I want you to do is I want you to pause, and this is sometimes the trickiest, but I want you to let yourself actually feel that love and support back from all the other women. I want you to imagine it pouring into your being, just feeling that, really connecting with it deeply. Okay? So, hopefully, I've been chatting long enough. You've been able to find your phone, get over to your alarms, set that for 9:09 a.m. or p.m. Again, we're not worrying about time zones and things, but it's a powerful, beautiful exercise that I love to do. And then I want you to head on over to your text messages, and I want you to text the word hope to my number, 385-212-4236. If you would love to just connect more. I love to get to chat with women. I specifically set aside time on my schedule to do that. I never know what these calls are going to be like, what's going to come up. They are powerful opportunities for us to explore the challenges that are going on. If you feel like you are wrestling with something or feeling like you need some direction or clarity, or just would love to have somebody to talk about something that you feel like you can't share with anyone else, these have been powerful opportunities. So I love to put that out there for anyone who feels like that's something that would be meaningful to you. That's my phone number, 385-212-4236. Sometimes I have needed these conversations and you have had something that has helped bolster me in my way. Sometimes it is a way for me to connect you with other people or resources or tools that may be of value. So I love getting to share that with anyone who needs to. So awesome. Sonia has found her chat. She is in Indio, California. Oh, welcome. So fun to have you here. Love this. Okay. So today we are going to be talking and exploring about our feminine foundations. But before we dive into that, we have to start the conversation a little bit earlier. And the place we're going to start it is looking at our stewardships that we have as women. Now, I don't know if you've thought about this much about what your stewardships are as a woman, but we have several. And so I'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and put in the chat, what are some of the stewardships that you feel like you have right now in your life? Okay. And if you're watching the replay, feel free to make a little list for yourself. You can kind of write these down. Today's going to be really interactive. I love to have questions and get you thinking and different things. So um, feel free to be participating as much as you can. And Sonia, you're also welcome if you want to have your camera on. I love getting to see what everyone is doing or what's going on in life. So no worries if you're doing something else, and also zero pressure. So we're just happy to have you here too. Let's see. Okay, so we've got some answers coming in here. Heidi says my body. Sonia says children. Yes, right? Okay, family. Yes. Good, good, good. We're starting to get some of these here. Okay. A few that I think of are our relationships, right? So that could be you may have a marriage or dating, that may be children, that may be um, your neighbors, your ward, your calling, right? If you have one that you're currently doing, this can be our bodies. This can be our gifts and talents that we've been blessed with. These can be managing our financial resources, taking care of our home, right? There are lots of these stewardships that often fall into our lives and experiences. Okay, so next question for you. We're going to do a little like self-reflection type one. Okay, so these are just for your own awareness. We're all here, we're all participating, but my goal is well do you feel like you are doing in navigating your stewardships? Okay, and I want to do a little 1 to 5 here. 5, if you're like, yes, I feel like I'm rocking it, I'm on top of these, like I feel like I'm managing them very well. 1 is you're like, I feel like I'm utterly failing, like I am not managing them well at all. Okay, where are we going? All right, Heidi says 3.5. Okay, love it. Love it. Again, this is just for kind of your own self-reflection. Where are we feeling in this? Nice. Sonia's at a 3. Okay, good, good. Now, obviously, different stewardships and at different times, we sometimes fluctuate, right? Some days we feel like, oh, yes, I killed it today. How can I do more of that? And then other days we're like, oh my gosh, I barely made it through the day. Like, this is not feasible, okay? So, overall, this is a good average to have kind of that awareness. Pretty common. Most people come in around 3, right? I'm not totally failing in this, but there's definitely room that I could be improving in things. Okay. So next, I want you to think about what is it that you feel like you do regularly to help support you in being able to nurture your stewardships well. Okay. What are some of the things that you do? All right, and there may be different things. Maybe right now you are focused on just moving your body. Maybe you are doing really well at, being intentional and spending time with each of your kids. Okay. What are some of those things that are helping support you managing your stewardships? I want you to think on this for a minute. Okay. Meditation. Oh, I love that. That's a powerful one. Love that. Okay. Praying. Yes, yes. Right. I love the idea of meditation being a type of prayer, right? So putting those together is beautiful. What else? You might be also, working on trying to figure out new ways too, right? So maybe you don't necessarily have something in place, but you're aware, I want to improve the way we're managing our laundry system, right? And so you're thinking about it, you're trying to figure it out. Right now, you're not there, but you're trying to see what can I do to support myself here. Hmm? Love this. Sonia says general conference talks. Yes, good, good, good. This is awesome. Okay. Well, one of the things that I have found is when we are struggling in feeling like there's room for us to improve in how we are managing our stewardships, right? So again, if you're anywhere of like 1 or higher, right? That there's room for us to continually improve in that. One of the tendencies we have is to feel like we have to do more. Okay, so I need to pray more. I need to go to the temple more. I need to read my scriptures more. I need to exercise more. I need to plan more, right? I need to meal prep more. I need to organize the day more. I need to spend more time. I need to serve more. I need to show up more. Okay. Anyone ever felt this feeling of like, yes, there's more I need to be doing? That's the key to fulfilling my stewardships better. Okay. Let's do a little 1 to 5. Who's resonating with me here? 5 is like, oh my gosh, yes, I feel that all the time. 1 is like, no, you're crazy. I've never felt that. Which, if you put one, I'm gonna be like, who are you? Right? Welcome to show up however you are, but I feel like this is a common thing for us. Yes. Okay, good. I'm in good company here. We got some fives here, right? That feeling of doing more. Anyone else besides me ever feel like that's a little bit exhausting though? And then it's hard to feel like, "Ugh, can I never, like I can't catch my breath. There's always something more I could be doing, I should be doing." And just feeling, in all honesty, like the weight of that, of there's more I should be doing and I'm not. Okay. Let me see. 1 to 5 here again. One is you're like, no, this never feels heavy. I'm fine with it. Five, you're like, yes, I feel that. It's a regular thing. Okay. Heidi's at a five, Sonia's at a five. Yeah. Okay. So that weight, right? Sometimes it's really uncomfortable to feel that, right? And sometimes there's this thing of like, ooh, I can't even let myself go there. If I really sit in this place too long, it starts to get uncomfortable. Like, I don't know what to do with that feeling. I don't know how I'm supposed to navigate it better. The only thing I really feel like I can do is to turn to God and be like, please help me. Please take this burden, make it lighter. Help me shift through this. Help me feel like I can do the things that I need to do. Okay. Anyone here turn to God, more prayer, more time in the temple to try and help you with that feeling? Low 1 to 5 again. Five of like, yes, God is my lifeline in that. One of like, nah, I do it on my own. Okay, five. Good, good. Okay, so we got some good connection and relationship going on with God here. And hopefully you have had experiences in your life before where God does show up because God is beautiful and is like, I got you. I'll help you. I'll move you through this. We can take care of this. Right? And there is something so profound in knowing that we do not have to do this life alone, that we have an ability to call upon sacred power to help support us in our lives. Okay. This is one of my favorite ways to view the covenants that we make. Okay. For those who may not be as familiar, covenants are a type of relationship that we enter into with God. And the purpose of that is for us to walk with God more directly so that we can experience more of what it is to be like God and to live life and see people and ourselves and our life the way God does. Okay. I love to almost view this kind of like an apprenticeship in a way, right? You're going to spend a lot of time around somebody that you want to gain the skills and the knowledge and the understanding and the ability that they have. And so there's a beautiful pattern and a process, a path, we often like to call it the covenant path, that has been laid out to help us understand kind of like the stages of this internship with God that we get to go into of understanding more of how to become like God is. Right? To enter into that deeper level of relationship. And one of the powerful blessings that comes when we do this is increase of spiritual power. We get access to God's power more directly in our lives. And this increases our capacity to be able to utilize that to carry the weight that we have for our different stewardships so that we can show up better in each one of them in our everyday life, our relationships, and our experiences. Okay. So, regardless of whether you are somebody who has been living this covenant relationship with God for many, many years now, perhaps decades, or if you are just starting out in that process and maybe just starting to have a desire of like, what would that relationship look like? What would that experience be? How could it help and support me more in my life? I want to invite you to remember how central our ability to access that covenant capacity is. Because it is the thing that strengthens us, it is the thing that gives us that vitality to go about carrying everything that God has entrusted you with. Right? You may feel a specific call in your heart. You may have children in your home. You may have people that are within your service, right? Perhaps you have a calling, or perhaps it is just something that you feel you are meant to show up in and help people in the world, right? And so This is an important piece on understanding this, right? And I don't know about you, but for me, I am always looking for every tool, every resource, every skill I can gain to help me better be able to access that power that is made possible through our covenants and through the atoning sacrifice of our Savior Jesus Christ. Anyone else interested in accessing more of that covenant power? Yeah? 1 to 5 here. Put this in the comments. 1, you're like, nah, I think I'm good. 5, you're like, yes, bring it all on. I want as much as I can hold. Okay. Love it. Love it. I'm in good company here. We got some 5s here. These are my kinds of ladies. I love this. Okay. So, one of the things that I have found that has really transformed my ability to access this covenant capacity is by recognizing what it actually looks like to be in relationship not only with God, but with the fullness of who I am. Okay. I'm going to share a little story with you here for a sec. Okay. Because some of you may not know me very well. I'm kind of like, who's this gal? What is she sharing? Where's all this coming from? Okay. So I was born and raised within the church, grew up here in Salt Lake City, kind of your classic Mormon family. I loved the gospel. I had a beautiful childhood, wonderful family, really beautiful experiences. When I was 18, I had been dating my then high school sweetheart, became my husband later, and I had some powerful experiences that happened around this time in my life. This was right when they were changing the missionary age. And I had always had this plan in my life of like, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to do study abroad, I'm going to go on a mission, like all of these things. And then eventually I would settle down, have my family, and move into that stage of my life. Well, as they're changing the missionary age, I was suddenly felt like God was inviting me and saying, hey, girl, I got a different plan for you. And if you will trust me with it, I have some beautiful things that I want to invite you into. And so I felt like what I needed to be doing was getting married. And I was like, I am not going to be the girl who gets married at 19. Like, it is such the stereotype. Like, I was telling you, I was going to be 28. I was not going to fall into one of those Mormon girls who gets married young. And yet, here was God inviting me into this experience. And to make it even more difficult, all of my friends at the time were leaving to go on missions. And so they were having God put them into a different experience. But it was fascinating because I learned something about God in a more visceral way, which was God does not just have universal plans for all of us. And it's like, oh, you always need to do this thing in this way. God is interested in what is going to help us individually grow and how is it going to help us in our own lives. So these friends, and I had a couple cousins, they actually had always been focused on wanting to get married, many of them. And I was shocked by this. They were like, my job and my role is to get married. And they were having like, it was a big deal, even in their families, to be like, no, I'm going to go on a mission, which was the reverse experience for me, which was kind of soothing because we could like be there for each other and I could encourage them on the beauty of going on missions. And because I grew up in a family that just like loved missionaries and missions. My grandparents were mission presidents. My dad lived in Denmark for a few years as a child while they were mission presidents, like loved the missionaries. So that was always a big part of my family culture. And so it was soothing for them to be like, no, Emily, marriage is a wonderful thing. Like you should be stepping into this. So I did. Little did I know that was going to be like the most beautiful experience of my life, but also set off a cascade of events that would simply turn my world upside down and inside out. Okay. Over the next several years, would go through a process of feeling like I no longer understood who I was. I didn't know who God was. I didn't know what I believed with the church. I felt like my marriage was struggling and falling apart. I didn't know how to connect with myself or my body. It was just like this implosion that happened. And I could look back and very easily be like, God, what the heck were you doing? I thought you were putting me on this good plan. What was going on here? Okay. And I didn't realize, but God was systematically going through all of these blocks that I had in my life and just like taking a sledgehammer to them, saying everything in your life that you have built up that does not align and match with who I am and who I know you to be and the life that I know is possible and available for you, we're going to take a sledgehammer to it. Okay. So I had to go through this process of recognizing every area where I was not fully matching who God knew me to be. And then after the demolition, right, God didn't just abandon me and leave me in ruins. God rebuilt my life and my relationships one by one, starting with myself, how I viewed myself, how I thought about myself, how I understood God, and all of the valuable truth that I had been raised with came back into my life piece by piece in a way that helped me recognize a deeper level of relationship and connection that I was able to have with myself, with God, with the church, with my husband, with my children, with my parents, with my neighbors, with my life, with my work, with the greater purposes that I felt like God was asking me to use in my life and in my experiences. And that was one of the most difficult, but one of the most powerful experiences that I had. And what I realized then was God was trying to show me all of the ways that I was actually trading increased covenant capacity for compensating. And that was a hard thing to recognize. There were a lot of things in my life that I felt like I was doing well. If you had asked me, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm confident, I'm great, I'm like all these things. But there was still that heaviness underneath, that feeling of that weight, like, oh, I'm not measuring up, I should be doing more. I don't know, how am I going to be doing this? And what God was trying to show me is that when we are in true covenant relationship, and that allows us to access more of that covenant capacity, it fills us. Okay, we don't feel the gap. We don't feel that, oh, I got to be doing more. We feel that when there are areas of our life that we are compensating. Okay, and it is that compensating that leaves us feeling lack. Okay, so what do I mean by compensating? Here's a few classic examples that I ran into for myself. One of them was overthinking every conversation and interaction that I had, right? I'd be questioning, oh, did I say the right thing? What are they thinking of me? Oh, did I talk too much? I don't know what's going on here, right? Just over analyzing so many different experiences that I had because I wanted to support people. I wanted to be able to show up. No worries, Heidi. I know you're driving and traveling, so reception and stuff can be spotty. We'll have you here if you can make it back in. But I felt that struggle of like, I want to make sure that people know I care about them. I want to make sure that they understand where I'm coming from or what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. And so I would overthink every interaction that I had. And I thought that was me being kind and that was me being responsible. And God had to go through a whole journey and show me, no, girl, that is not. Okay. I don't want you overthinking things in that way because what's actually happening when you show up that way is you are diminishing your ability to trust yourself. You are losing your capacity to connect with me, to feel the wisdom, and to bring that into your life and relationships. You have become oriented externally. You're worried more about what's going on out here and how to make sure that that changes something on the inside of you and the inside of the other person. I work from the inside out. I do not work from the inside in. I need you learning how to start here and let that be the place that you are connecting with people when you speak with them, when you talk with them. That was a hard lesson. Okay. Another one that showed up in my life. I was the worst at, or maybe I'm going to pull a little Monica from Friends here. I was the best at not resting. Okay. I was like Superwoman. I will do all the things all the time. Somebody needs something, I'll show up. I'll be there. There's a need, like I'll make it happen. You can count on me. I will be your person. And it was so wonderful. And I used to say like there was just a feeling and a look that people would get in their eyes like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you would do that. And I loved that look. Like there was nothing better than that feeling of knowing I got to help somebody in a way that was so unexpected to them and yet so appreciated. Okay. But God had to teach me a little bit about the importance of saying, hey, I know you want to care for people. I know you want to help them. I know you want to serve them well, but you will not be able to serve them well if you cannot learn how to rest. You will burn yourself out. You are teaching your body to ignore your needs, to override the feelings that I divinely gave you in your body. I did not design your body to run 100% 24/7. I built in rest for a reason. You got to learn how to use it. This is not healthy. This is not what I wanted for you to be doing. And that was another hard thing. And that one is probably the one I resisted the most, to the point that God literally had to put me in the hospital, break me physically so that I could not help myself. I remember after my second son was born, it was an emergency C-section. There were all these complications that happened afterwards. I had a life-threatening infection show up, finally get home, and I'm just like a shell of a person physically. I can barely hold this brand new baby that I'm bringing home. And I remember lying in my bed. And I have all these wonderful women who've shown up to help me in my home, and they're cleaning my toilets and things. And it was the most uncomfortable thing to sit there in my bed and not be able to do anything, hardly move while they're cleaning my toilets. It was the worst feeling in the world. I hated it. And I remember God saying to me, I had to literally incapacitate you so that you would learn how to receive. And you must learn how to receive, how to rest, and how to let other people show up for you. It was a powerful lesson. And it is one that I've become the biggest advocate for women, saying, I know the lengths at which God will go to make sure we as women learn this. And there's a lot easier ways to do it than having to wait until he incapacitates you for you to learn it. Okay. So that was another area of compensation that I learned. Okay. There were several more of these experiences that I had where God was again teaching me that the way I was showing up, that I thought was righteous, that I thought was meaningful, that I thought was fulfilling everything that he wanted was incomplete. Okay. It's not that these things were bad. It's not that I needed to stop caring about them. It's that I was missing the other half of what made them sustainable, of what made them stable, of what made it possible for me to show up that way in my life on a regular basis, not only for my benefit, but for my families, for my husband, for my community, for my ward, and for the people that I would care about. Okay. I had to learn how to hold both. Okay. So we're going to do another little 1 to 5 here. How do you feel like you're feeling in this area? Do you think that there's some areas where maybe you're compensating too? Or are you like, nope, I feel like I'm pretty balanced in all these areas? Okay. 1 to 5. I know I just gave a couple of examples. You might be thinking of a few others that could be coming up, but how do you feel like you are showing up? Is this resonating? Okay. 4. Yep. All right. Good to hear. I'm not alone in this experience, right? So the question then became, how do I get that other half of the experience, right? And is there a way to do it that doesn't have to like so destructively demolish my life, right? In the process. That became a question that I wanted to know and understand. Because if there's one thing I've learned about God, is there's varying degrees at which God will work with us, right? God's like, hey, we can go this route, we can go this route. The choice is up to you. Where do you want to go? And I was like, okay, I've been doing some of the hard route. Let's see what's a little bit of the easier route. And what I felt like God was beginning to help me understand is that part of the challenge that I had was not that I wasn't faithful enough, not that I didn't have a strong enough connection with God or faith or devotion, not that I wasn't willing to learn these things, but because I was missing a foundational understanding underneath that, which was my ability to hold my feminine foundations. These foundations were something that I was lacking. And as a result of not having them there, it was making all of these other areas of my life more difficult. It's like I had this like a weight of all my stewardships and responsibilities, right? It was up here. And I'm like trying to hold it all on my own and like, oh my gosh, this is so heavy. I can hardly do it. I can't do all these things. And God was trying to help me see, hey girl, you're compensating here. I actually have pillars that I have intended for you to have in who you are and how you live your life that support you in being able to hold those foundations. Your pillars are not fully established. And so instead, you're compensating by trying to hold that up yourself. That's never what I intended for you. I do not want you in survival mode. When you are in covenant relationship with me, you are meant to be thriving. Okay, that does not mean life is easy. That doesn't mean we don't have hardships. That doesn't mean we don't get challenges. Absolutely not. We're here in the human experience. It's a part of the deal. We signed up for it. We wanted it. But there's a vast difference in how we can experience those challenges and how we move through it. And there are far too many of us that God is saying, this is not the way I wanted you to be operating in this. I have a better plan and a better design for you, one that allows you to unlock more of me being able to come through you. And what I felt like God taught me was he went on this journey of saying, hey, I need you to remember who you actually are. Okay. First and foremost, you are a spiritual being. I know you think you're a human. You are, but that is your secondary identity. Your first one is as a divine spiritual being. Okay. Our ability to become like God is, or to develop that divine nature, is not some reward we're supposed to get at the end of a well-lived human life. It is our starting point. Okay? It is where we began. It is what we connected with. And part of the whole reason we wanted to come to Earth was so that we could have an opportunity to progress in our opportunity to grow into godhood that was available for us. And that required that we learn how to take the divine part of who we already are, the experiences that we had, the knowledge that we had, the promises that we made, right? We know we existed premortally and we have been taught. In fact, there's some beautiful conference talks that I love. President Irene, President Nelson, there's a few of them speaking to women directly and saying there were gifts that we had premortally, that we were given, instructions, understanding, and promises we made for what we would do in our lives here. Right. And I remember hearing that the first time before God taught me all of this. And I was like, awesome. Could I like get some notes on what that was and like instructions on how to do that? Because that would be really nice. I don't actually remember any of that. Right. And what I feel like God was wanting me to learn was to say, it is a part of who you are. Okay. It is a part of this divine part of who you are. And our journey through life is meant to be how do we bring that fullness of who we are into this physical form so that it can then be expressed and experienced and embodied through our life. And there's a pattern and a process for how to do that. And the more that we are able to hold of who we are in our life and in our being, the more of that divine part of who we are unlocks within us. Right? When the physical body is able to hold it, the spirit remembers and is able to communicate it. One of my favorite lines that comes from Joseph Smith is talking about the experience of receiving revelation and how it felt like a remembrance. Right? It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to teach you something new. It's like this remembering of something that was once there. And I love to think of that when we have experiences in our own lives. It is that connection where the body and the spirit are finally aligned in a way that something is able to be communicated. It's understood. It's a part of who we are physically, not just spiritually and divinely. Okay. And so when I started to understand that, like, that's the goal, that's the point, that is how we then become a vessel who can be in that relationship with God, and we can do so much more. Right? It's like I love my little kids. They're so fun right now. And like there's nothing like watching them play and grow and discover. And like even a little baby when they're first like looking at their hands and they're like, what is this? And just kind of like staring at their hand, right? But I'm learning it is also so fun when your kids start getting older and you get to like actually start doing things with them, right? Like we're gonna go on a bike ride together. We're gonna go hiking together. Like you get to start having these experiences that you couldn't do before they had developed enough. They need to walk. They need to learn their balance. They need to figure out this kind of coordination that's going on. Well, I believe there's something similar in our spiritual development as well. That the more we learn how to embody that divine part of who we are, the more we get to run and play and experience so much more of life that God wants us to have in our experiences. And too many of us have separated from that experience. We see the divine or the spiritual part of ourselves, of our lives, as often separate from our human experiences, right? There's a little bit of this whole, I'm maybe not a Sunday only person, right? I think about God. God's a very active and integral part of my life, but there's still sometimes easy to fall into that mindset of like, oh yeah, there's like the spiritual things that I do, like go to the temple or go to church on Sunday or do my ministering. And then there's like my real life, right? That has bills and dinner I gotta figure out and kids throwing up and whatever other challenges that are going on, right? There's kind of this like separation that shows up. And part of what I felt like God was teaching me through this whole pattern was to say, hey, these are not meant to be two different parts of your life. This is meant to be like two pedals on a bike. And when you learn how to integrate them more fully, you're bringing more of that divine part of who you are into your life. We're going to go so many cool places when we do. And the way that you experience life, the way that you move through life, that's what begins to transform. It was not that I needed to do more, that I needed to try harder, that I needed to have more effort. I needed more of who I am, that divine part of me into my beingness so that from that place, more could show up in my life and in my relationships. And that's where everything began to transform. My marriage went from one of the most painful experiences of my life that I was not sure we would survive to one of the greatest blessings in my life. My parenting went from a struggle where I felt so guilty and like I did not know what I was doing to having genuine, meaningful relationships with my kids, feeling confident in that I knew how to walk with them through life and helping them discover who they are and how they can have their own relationship and connection with God. My relationship with my physical body utterly transformed. I was so disconnected from my physical body. Like we could do a whole masterclass just on that stewardship because it was such a challenge. Sexually, physically, mentally, emotionally, evenly, there was so much of my physical body I did not know how to connect to, how to relate to. I mean, you're talking to the girl who avoided a gym class for 12 years of school education. I would do anything I could to not be in a gym class because my physical connection with my body did not work. And for those of you who are curious, like, how did you make that work with requirements? Dance classes and online things. There's a way you can work the system. Right? I found it. Okay. But I discovered my physical body is the most incredible thing. I have a vision and an understanding of why premortally I think we were so obsessed with the fact of like, I cannot wait to get a physical body. Okay. And yet we get here to earth, and this is probably one of the stewardships we think about the least. Right? We forget, we take it for granted what it is to be in physical form, what it is to feel the thrill of being alive, of getting to move, of feeling the essence of who you are, of life, of love, moving through your form. Right? There is something beautiful in that expression. And it is something I could not access until I transformed my relationship and understanding with my physical body. Okay? It was one of the most powerful transformations because it was one of the areas I was compensating for the most. Okay? All of these different areas of your life, whatever stewardship you're thinking of right now that is a challenge, something that you're like, I don't know how to handle it. I don't know how to balance it. I don't know how to move forward. All I can see are the areas I'm falling short. I can tell you with utter conviction you don't need to have some other like new planner that you're doing. You don't need some better management system for what's going on. Okay. And it's not that you're not spending enough time in the temple or the scriptures, though there's always a beautiful place for that, right? I'm never going to tell somebody to do less of those moments with God. But I am going to tell you if you want to unlock a new way to move through life, a new way to connect with who you are physically and spiritually, and bring that into every area and aspect of your life and relationships, learning how to access these three feminine foundations and to integrate them into your life is the most powerful thing. It is incredible in the way that it unlocks who you already are. I think that's perhaps my favorite thing about it is we sometimes get in our minds this idea of like, this is who God wants me to be. This is the thing that I should be figuring out in my life. And I'm just falling short and I'm just trying and I'm going to get up again and I'm going to get up again. And I'm going to try and try and try. No. Okay. You're over here. You're a divine spiritual being. You already got a lot of this. The thing we're learning is how much of that divinity that is an extension of God. Do we realize what that actually means? You're not just like some offspring of God. You have the literal essence of who God is flowing through you. It is a part of who you are. And our challenge is to see how much of that can we bring into our life and into our relationships. And that's an entirely different experience. Okay. You're not falling short of trying to reach some eternal goal. You're figuring out how to be divine in physical form, in your humanity, as a part of it. Those two things that seem contradictory to each other, they're not. Right? And it's part of the beautiful reason why we follow Jesus Christ. Because God was so gracious and so wonderful and said, hey, guess what? You're going to mess this up. You're going to get it wrong because that's a part of life. And that's okay because I'm going to send somebody who's going to make a path possible so that when you screw it up, it's not the end. You get to try again. You get to figure it out. You get to keep going. And More than that, I'm also going to give you an example so that you have an idea of how do I navigate this idea of taking the divine part of who I am and bringing it into my human life. And we're going to get a perfect example to see what that looks like and how to experience that in our lives. Right? That's part of why we follow Jesus Christ, why he's such instrumental, and why he has such an ability to understand who we are and the journey that we're on. Right? He's meant to walk us through that process. And because of the atonement, he felt every one of those challenges that we would have. All of those blocks when it's like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to breathe in. I don't know how to allow more of who I am into my life. This feels too hard. This feels too painful. This feels too unfair. Right? The physical, fallen, temporal world right now is very far from the spiritual home and heaven we originated in. And sometimes that dissonance, it aches on like a spiritual level. If we really let ourselves, sometimes you can feel that, those moments of like, this is not what home is supposed to be like. I just want to go home. Right? I want that feeling of love, of peace, of joy that does not seem that it is available here on the earth. Right? And Christ knows that. He understands that. That's why he can walk with us. And it's also why he can give us the hope and say, hey, this world will also one day be transformed, the same way we have the opportunity to be transformed. So every day we practice, every day we work to bring more of that light, more of that love, more of that experience into the world. And the way we bring it into the world is by bringing it into ourselves. And one of the things that I found is so essential to be able to do that is to have those three foundations. So let's talk about them. What are they? What are these three foundations that we need in order to be able to hold more of who we divinely are in our life, which allows us to increase our ability to access our covenant capacity and to show up more for ourselves, for our family, for our communities, bringing love and light, hope, and peace into the world as disciples of Jesus Christ. Here for that? Yeah? Okay. So, three things are number one, first and foremost, we have to learn how to operate as the full version of who we are. Okay. Like I said, most often we get this reversed. We've got to learn to reorient ourselves because we've become focused on being human first, right? I gotta pay my bills. I gotta feed myself. I gotta run the errands. I gotta da 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 whatever, right? There's lots of things in our lives that keep us focused on this physical temporal world. Now, there's a reason for that, right? It's physical, it's temporal, it's right here in front of us. It's really natural and really easy for us to focus on those things. And they matter, right? Because you do need food to be able to maintain our physical bodies. We do need to have shelter. We do need these like things. They're important, okay? I'm not saying they're not. But there's a difference between I'm in my human experience and I'm going to call upon spiritual power or I'm going to do spiritual things to try and help me feel better and increase that capacity, right? That is still operating from being oriented human first, okay? We got to switch that, right? Because we got to remember who we actually are, right? Our theology begins with heavenly parents, and our highest aspiration is to be like them. That comes directly from President Delano Jokes. Right? I love that understanding. There's also a few others by President Nelson. And if you know me, I'm like obsessed with the prophecy that was given by President Kimball back in 1979, that in 2015, President Nelson said, hey, women of the church, you are going to have a significant role to play in the numerical and spiritual growth of the church. Okay. Well, if you look at the talks that come after that, there's a lot of them that talk about understanding who we are. Like that is one of the themes that is repeated over and over and over and over again. And to me, I looked at this and I looked at the foundations that I felt like God was teaching me. And I was like, oh, of course. No wonder they're telling us this because they're saying if you do not get the orientation right, you will always be compensating and you will always feel like you're falling short and it will always be harder. And the closer and closer we get to the last days, the more relevant I think this is going to be because the gap is going to get wider and wider and wider between those who are moving towards Christ and his return and those who are falling away from it. So if we're compensating, that stretch is going to get heavier and harder and harder. Okay. So there's good news in this because that means it's going to naturally kind of kick our butt to remember, like, oh, there's an easier way. Please show me. Please tell me. I want to do it. Right. And that is to reorient ourselves first and foremost to this understanding hey, you're a spiritual being and you're going to approach every aspect of your life from that place first. Okay. Second foundation, right? Is we have to learn how to repattern ourselves. Okay. This one comes into specifically as women, and I love it so, so, so much. Like, another thing I'm obsessed with is talking about birth. And whether you have ever given birth to physical children or not, if you are a woman, this pattern of birth is something I believe is essential. Okay. Because we are cyclical beings and we are meant to birth things into the world. And yet, we live in a world that is very masculine in nature. So, most of us have been taught how to build things in a linear fashion, right? So, an example of this is I need to, if you want to, like, let's say, lose weight, right? It's like I need to make my plan. I got to figure out when I'm going to do it, how I'm going to do it, and then I execute it and I'm going to go and do it, right? That is a building mentality. Okay. Our nature is not meant to build things. It is to birth them. And that means it is a different way of approaching life and moving through it because birth requires an allowing. There's a different type of relationship that you have in what you are bringing into the world. Classic example of this. If we take the example of literal physical birth, you are not building that child inside your body, right? You're not thinking, oh, today I need to like make sure we've got 10 toes developed and tomorrow I'm going to work on building a nose. Like, no, okay? It is a pattern and a process, and you allow it to unfold within you. Right? Now, you still have specific roles and responsibilities. You got to make sure you're resting. You got to make sure you're moving your body. You got to make sure you're getting enough nutrients. But when you do your part of things and then you hold space for the other things to allow, it's actually what allows us to be a vessel for the spiritual things that God has to take form and then be brought into this experience. We are portals between the spiritual and the physical. And this is true not just of children. It is true of the business idea you have, the podcast you want to start, the new routine you want to build for going to bed and having better sleep, for the physical body you want to have, for the way you want to parent your children differently. Okay. Whatever it is you want, there's a spiritual version of that experience that exists first. And when you learn how to be that portal, it changes how you relate with God and how you connect. And it puts you into a place where the things you want to create in your life are working with your natural divine design as a woman. Okay. Part of the reason we struggle so much is we are trying to build things when that is not our design. We are not meant to build things, we are meant to birth them. So, learning how to birth things into the world becomes essential. And one of the things that this requires is recognizing we have a cyclical nature, not a linear one. And this is another reason that we get stuck in that thing of I have to do more, I have to show up more, I've got to keep doing more, 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 more. That is looking at a linear progression. Okay. I see this all the time, again, in the physical birth world that has kind of forgotten some of the natural patterns of a woman and her body, where we look at measurements and it's like, oh, is she progressing through labor or is she not? Oh, she's stalling. There's a dip in things that are happening. No, 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 my friends. Okay. We are cyclical. There's going to be an ebb and a flow and a shift as things are moving throughout our lives. This is more than just recognizing we have like our monthly cycles and the pattern throughout our life of being premenstruating, menstruating, preparing to end menstruation, and post menstruation, though that is a significant part of it, right? And it's again another way of seeing this divine design, this pattern that we were created with shows up physically in who we are, but it also has an emotional, a mental, and a spiritual component that we are meant to move through life in waves, that there's this ebb and flow to it. And so if you've ever had the experience of like starting a new routine and it's like going really well, really, really well, and all of a sudden it's like everything that you were doing before suddenly stops working. And it's like, I don't know, it's just not working anymore. What was once working isn't anymore. If you've ever had that experience, that is an example of the cyclical nature trying to come through. Okay. And what happens is we think we are the problem, that we're doing something wrong, when in fact, we're not allowing ourselves to move with the patterns that we are designed with. And so we think something is off instead of recognizing, oh, in some seasons, I'm supposed to do this. And then in other seasons, I'm supposed to do this. It's just like planting a garden, right? We sit there and we go, oh, it's so terrible. I'm so terrible. I used to be so good at this thing and now it's not happening. It's like, no, it's winter. You're not gonna have stuff in winter. Quit beating yourself up over this, okay? Like, We have different seasons to who we are and how we're creating things. So when we get that first foundation in place and we learn to reorient ourselves and say, okay, I'm a spiritual being first, I'm learning to express that into my human experience, then there's a pattern and a process for how I do this. I need to be birthing it, which again, that's why the reorientation is really helpful because it's really hard to birth things if you're not connected to the portal first. Right? We got to be from that spiritual place coming into the physical. Then, as we're moving through this pattern of birth, we have to recognize again, there are cycles to it. First trimester is not the same as third trimester. And if you treat them the same, it's going to be a problem. Okay. We have to be able to recognize where we are in the different cycles and the different parts of the pattern so we know how to move through them. And the cool thing is, there is a basic pattern that can be applied to anything in every part of your life. So when you learn the specific processes of how to birth something and you know the different stages of the pattern and how it plays out, you can apply it to any area of your life. Okay. It becomes so beautiful. One of my favorite areas is honestly in parenting and in my marriage. Because when I'm parenting my kids and it's like, oh, we're like really close and things are going really well. And then it's like a switch flips. And all of a sudden, like our relationship is just like, you're driving me nuts and you're not listening and you're not understanding anything. And what is going on here? Before I knew about this pattern, I just felt like I was failing or my kid was being difficult. When I understood the pattern, I was like, ah, okay, we've progressed. We're now in the next stage. I know what to do in this stage. We're going to do things differently now. And I got to see it as everything was progressing and moving us forward rather than feeling like there were all these roadblocks that kept getting in my way that I had to overcome. And that shift in and of itself, it will honestly transform any relationship you have, your relationship with your kids, your relationship with your spouse. Like that was another one, big thing when I got this language to describe this pattern so that then I could communicate to my husband of like where we each were in the process. Another game changer. It's no longer like we're battling against each other. And it's not just like, oh, it's my time of the month or whatever. No, it's like, hey, this is where we are in the pattern and process and how to sync up and be able to be on the same page so much better. Okay. So, pattern number two, the foundation is we've got to recognize we're birthing and we're cyclical beings. That comes after foundation number one, which is reorienting ourselves to recognizing we are spiritual beings first, human beings second. Okay. Third foundation here. Third foundation is we then, once we are able to recognize we're going to operate with the fullness of who we are and we're going to learn how to trust the process, we now need to learn how to be in relationship with other people while we do that. Okay, because this is where the challenge starts to show up, right? It's one thing to work on it on ourselves and be like, okay, this is who I am, and this is how I'm going to show up in the world and in my life. It's another when you start adding in the variables of other people, right? And then when you add in the things of people who think differently, who believe differently, who have different views and opinions, like how are you supposed to stay connected to yourself and to each other with all of these differences that are going on? Okay. So after we learn how to reorient ourselves and we learn how to repattern ourselves, we have to learn how to reconnect. Okay. And this is probably one of the most confusing ones. And I see it playing out in the LDS community so much right now. I wish this was like something, it's like, I think in Alma, where he says, I wish I had the trumpet of an angel that I could just like, oh, declare to the world. Like, this is one of those moments because I see so many families and relationships that are going through this process of like, hey, we were really close as a family. And then there's somebody who like something happens and shifts and they start pulling away. And it causes this wedge in the relationship. Maybe they're leaving the church, maybe they're struggling with things, maybe something's going on in their life, right? And it's like, then you get in this place of tension and it's like, oh, we feel so far apart from each other now. Okay. And what crushes me to the core is to see families who do not know how to navigate this pattern and process together. And so there's this part where we're going through this journey of, yes, we have to reorient to ourselves and how we're showing up, but then we are meant to reorient back into our families. Right? And reconnect with each other. And I see far too often when people don't have a skill set and the foundation and understanding of how to do this, they often end up leaving God, breaking relationships, ending marriages. Like it just has such a big impact. right? And so it is one of those things where I want people to know and understand what is going on here. Why is this happening? And to be able to recognize that it is a part of God's pattern and design, that it is not something that we have to turn to secular people and rules and understanding to be like, oh, this is the problem. You don't understand this, and this thing is unhealthy, and this is whatever. No, 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 no. Okay. We have an understanding of what relationship is meant to look like. And when you understand this pattern of these foundations here, the gospel comes alive in such a powerful way. It is like, oh my gosh, it blows my mind constantly to realize, okay, God really does know what God is doing, like, has a total understanding of this. And when I learned how to move through this cycle, it transformed the way I related to people. It transformed the way I saw the challenges and the difficulties that were occurring and made me realize and understand so much more meaningful what a Zion community actually would look like and feel like. Okay. We sometimes go to these different extremes where we're like, everybody has to fit in this specific space of this is what God has defined as good and right. And when you're in this space, this is Zion. Or we go to the other extreme and it's like, no, everybody should just be who they are and how they are. And like, there's room for everyone and what's going on. And that's just like this chaos over there or this like container that sometimes feels too small. And what I found is it's a wheel. Okay. And Christ is at that center point. And Christ says, yes, you need to connect with me. Because again, who are we? We're spiritual beings first and foremost, and we have a process and a pattern that we are all moving through. There are true principles that are important to understanding that. And there's also an infinite number of points in which we can connect ourselves to Christ around that wheel. Okay, so I may be over here leaning at the angle this way, and somebody else may be trying to connect with Christ from a completely different space. Right? And I may look at that and be like, oh, you're totally wrong. You need to be oriented this way. No, no, no. That's my spot and my point in connection with Christ. They have a different one. Okay. But I can't try and move myself out of my spot just because I feel like, oh, I need to be more like them. Right. And I shouldn't be limiting and saying, well, I only like these people who are kind of at a similar angle to me. And I don't like these people who are at a very different angle from me. Right. We have to understand how to know ourselves, our connection to God and Christ, what that looks like, where we connect with, and how to allow room for others to be in that space too. It is so powerful. And what's cool is these three foundations, you'll notice they build on each other, right? They're helping us recognize this is who we are, this is how we show up in our life, and this is how it transforms our relationships and our communities. And when we have those three foundations in place, that is what allows us to operate as these beautiful hands of Jesus Christ, sharing the gospel, teaching truth, living our lives in a way that allows the light that we naturally hold and that portal and connection of the divinity of God to radiate from us and into the world. And that is what I am passionate about doing. I want as many women as I can, members, not members, learning these foundations because it will transform you. It will transform your life. It will transform the way you move through, and it will allow more of God's power onto the earth. And in the last days, that is exactly what we are needing more of. Okay, so with all of that being said, I want to invite you into this special opportunity that I have. This is a little pre-thing. You guys are getting an early awareness of this. I actually haven't said anything yet to anyone else. But I have started the Thriving Feminine School, and it is a place to teach these three foundations to women to help them understand what they are, how to move through them, how to integrate it in your life. It's a powerful thing because it was uniquely designed in a way to be experiential oriented. What do I mean by that? We're very used to learning things intellectually, right? So I need the knowledge, I need the understanding, I need my notebook, I need to like do all these things. And then once I know it, then I can try it and apply it in my life. Okay. What I have learned from our feminine natures, again, we are not meant to be logic-based beings. We're meant to be heart-based ones. That's part of the reorientation that we do of moving from human first, trying to access that spiritual bit, to reconnecting through the heart with that like orientation of who we are, and then using our mind to help us understand how to direct that and bring it into our life. Okay. And so a part of this experience has been designed in a way to give you practice because I could never design a course or a program that could perfectly fit your life, your challenges, your purpose, your mission, your understanding and connection with God, right? That would be like an infinite number of things that I'm trying to figure out and design. Not going to happen, okay? Not my job. God's got that one taken care of. On charge of that. What I can do, though, and what I feel like God has invited me into as part of my stewardship, is sharing what these patterns are and how to understand those foundations more clearly and to provide opportunities for women to go through a guided experience. So you're bringing your everyday life and you're like, hey, this is what's happening today. This is what's showing up here. And we're going to use what's going on in your real life, in your real thoughts, in your real emotions and experiences, and use that to help you understand how to build these foundations and these skills from that. It is a powerful experience because it changes you viscerally on the inside out. Yes, Heidi, you are already a part of this group, so you know what I'm talking about here. We're revamping a couple of other things as we're getting started new. So there's some new stuff that's going to be coming for you too that you'll get, Heidi, as well. But it's a beautiful experience in understanding this process and how do we start applying it. So I've made it simple because there is some part that needs to be intellectual, right? We do need to talk through a couple of things, get some language in place, understand things. That's all designed in a podcast style, so it's easy for you to listen to and understand. Just I'm busy. I got a lot going on. You don't have time to sit down and watch videos and whatever. You need something easy to just listen to, right? But then we do workshops every week, and that's a place where we get to come live, do some of that interaction, work on strengthening those foundations so you understand what are they, how am I applying them, what's off, what tweaks it needs to happen. You're getting that real-time feedback. Much like working with a personal trainer who's there, looking at, okay, adjust your posture a little bit. Let's customize a little bit more here, right? You're getting familiar with what does it look like and what does it feel like for you to operate in this new way of being with having those foundations in place. But then one of my favorite parts is I've also added in a GroupMe and a Marco Polo container that are small little cohorts. I don't want it to get crazy on Marco Polo because if you get too many people in there, then it's just chaos. But we keep it small and you get to connect with other women. And this is like the magic because what I have learned is when we get to that third foundational tier, and we can access this all throughout, but it just gets more and more powerful the more women you have who have these foundations in place, is it's like you have one puzzle piece and somebody else has another puzzle piece and somebody else has another one. And so when you get women talking together and working with each other, it becomes this like increased, I want to say portal of revelation, where it's like, oh, you're getting this piece and I'm getting this piece. And it just amplifies the experience for everyone. Even on the workshops and different experiences, anytime we're interacting, I'll have my idea of like, okay, this is what we're going to go over. This is what's happening today. And the comments that are said, the thoughts that are shared, it shifts it and molds it and shapes it into exactly what it needs to be. And instead of that feeling like a haphazard random thing, because we have the understanding of the different foundations in place, we get to see it as more of an active process that we're participating in. And it's so cool to witness and show up. Some of those relationships are some that have continued on years after women have left the program. They still keep their little conversations going because, in part, another piece of this is it's helpful as you're developing these foundations to be surrounded by other people that you can calibrate to, right? It's kind of like a magnet. And if you think back to elementary school, if you ever took like the paper clip on the magnet and we just like run it over and over and over again, and that helps magnetize the paper clip. Well, we're getting that experience when you surround yourself with more women going through this process. You get to learn from what they're seeing, what they're doing, what they're going through, and it just amplifies everything from there. Each one of these is a separate 12-week long program that we go through. There's three of them that build on top of each other, but the first one is the most essential foundation. We're getting started again here in June, and I have a special discounted offer that is going on for women right now if that's something that you're interested in. So, Sonia, I would love to see, there's zero pressure here because another part of my philosophy is you know you. You know if this is something that is speaking to you, that feels like it's something you want to explore. If that's something that's calling to you, I would love to chat with you a little bit more to see if it would be a good fit for you, if it would be a good time, answer any questions that you have. Yeah, so let me know if that's something would that be something you'd be interested in exploring together more? Oh, you're muted. Hang on.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Um, I have a little bit of time if you want. We can go through it right now, or if there's a better day, because I know today's a holiday, we can schedule another time.
No, yeah, it's fine now.
Okay, awesome.
So,
Um,
yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording here. And Heidi, you're already in. Oh, she